this thing you got to do, and you're just not sure if you remember how to do it because it feels like it's been, I don't know, weeks since you did it last, and you're really wanting to do a good job because you're always trying to do a good job, but you're just at the same time sitting there wondering to yourself like, oh man, is any of this any good? I'm going to have some existential panic. Here we go. That's the space I'm in right now. It's already been kind of a long and stressful and winding day of trials and tribulations and discoveries that were not great. And to say it's put me in an introspective mood, I think is somewhat of an understatement. So I will absolutely positively do my sincere best. But I'm nervous, and I'm going to try and not let that totally show. But you need to know that, like, I really want this to go well. I really want to do a good job. I'm just kind of having a day, you guys. I hope you're well. I hope you're happy. I hope the people around you know that you care about them. I think that's the most important thing I want to get across today. Yeah, I think that's where I want to start. So, oh God, we have like 20 seconds left. Anybody have any snacks? Anybody need to stop and use the bathroom before we get going? Like, go now before the car starts moving. Keep your hands and feet inside the vehicle at all times. And let's do this. Let's get back to work. Here we go. God, I wonder what button it is.
All right. Just remember what I've taught you.
What the fuck is that?
Hey, yo.
Let's go while we're young.
It occurs to me that is the wrong graphic, but you know what? I'm going to leave it because it's fine. It's just the intro graphic. It can stay there. Hi, everybody. How have you been? I hope you're doing okay. It's been a hot minute, hasn't it? We've been away for a while. We were doing some other things. I have to report that not nearly enough got done in my time away. So there's still this very interesting, let's call it scramble of, oh my God, I left all these things half finished and half assed. So forgive me if early on today I'm feeling a little frenetic and a little scattered. I'm trying to remember where all the bells and whistles are and trying to remember what all the buttons do. So bear with me. We're in this together. If this is the first time you're checking this out, if you have no idea what this is, hi, I'm John. It's my job to help you write better. You presumably are a writer or a person making a thing, and it's so nice to have you here. It's so nice for you to come check this out. This is the Writer's Chat. So let's go do the usual opening, since I remember most of it kind of sort of vaguely. Ladies and gentlemen, guys, gals, non-binary pals, friends, writers, makers, doers, dreamers, planners, plotters, dancers, show enthusiasts, popcorn people, I guess. I mean, you guys are people too. Unionists, anti-capitalists, anti-gerontocrats, anybody who knows roughly how to change their own oil, anybody who's ever had to like double space a thing in Word or slide the Zoom slider up because, oh my God, all of a sudden the fonts look really tiny. OGL defenders, anybody who's ever discovered that they like a little bit of extra sauce on their pasta. People making screenplays, people making objects, people doing cosplay, people boldly traveling from one side of the country to the next. And most importantly, the comrades. Hello. Hi. How are you? So this is the Writer's Chat, as I said. I have collected questions. I have 13 questions, collected questions from all across social media and random people asking me things through email over the course of the week. And I look forward to doing my absolute best to try and answer them. Let's see what trouble we can get into tonight, shall we? I'm going to tell you right now, there's a couple spicy ones. It's a little bit of spice. Like a little bit of spice, like a liter container's worth of spice, or a hogshead. It's a hogshead container of spice tonight. All right, here we go. Question number 1. What's the most common problem that you see in manuscripts, that I see in manuscripts, that isn't grammar and it's not structure? Fantastic. Love this question, and love the fact that it's first. Here we go. The most common problem I encounter when it isn't the words on the page, it's a lack of understanding what it is you're trying to do when you write the words on the page. Because anybody can just string together some sentences. They might not be great sentences. They might be too long. They might be too short. They might be really simplistic. They might be overly complicated. But the production of sentences is not the entirety of this job. It's not the entirety of this art. It's not the entirety of this career. That's just how the material in your brain makes it out into the world. All right? It's just the method. It's like saying if I were singing a song, me singing into the microphone is part of the job, but it is not the entire job, because if I have to go write the song or do the instrumentation or deal with the administrative work of being a recording person, there are multiple facets and dimensions to the job. The act of writing, dealing with the grammar, dealing with the structure, is part of the job. However, the most common problem, even just generally, exists beyond grammar and structure, because people love to take shortcuts or play it safe when it comes to grammar and structure. They follow a structure or a format with like other things they've seen, and they play it pretty safe with grammar. They use language, they use construction they're more or less used to, so they're playing in a very safe swimming pool. The most common problem I see is completely misunderstanding that they have to put a movie in the reader's head. You can't just detail 16 things about a character, 22 pieces of furniture in a room, or the fact that this happens, then that happens, then this happens over there, then that happens over there, one after the other, like you're reading me the recipe steps to make a stew or something. It's more than that. It's way more than that. You've got to put a movie in the reader's head, which means you have to have a non-janky, non-stiff, reasonably three-dimensional, reasonably well-crafted cinematographic experience in your brain. You know what this picture is. You have to figure out how you're going to get this picture into somebody else's brain through the medium of words on a page. It's not enough just to recount things. It's not enough just to say this happened, then that happened, then this happened. He felt this, she felt that. Like you're reading a transcript or we are walking through the instruction manual for something. It's not that. The idea is, and this is where the most common problem comes up, you forget that the reader wants to feel like they're the invisible tourist in the room. Whatever the room, whatever the scene, whether we're in the CEO's corporate office or whether we're in the dirty back alley or whether we're at the top of the Empire State Building or whether we're on, I don't know, Jupiter Epsilon 6 or something. Wherever the story is taking place, wherever the scene is being focused, the reader wants to feel like they're somewhere in the room. Whether they're parallel and standing next to the main character or whether they're floating above this whole scene looking down, they want to feel like they're there. And you have a responsibility to craft imagery, not just text, not just the vague, hey, there's a chair, hey, there's a couch, hey, there's a space station, look, an alien. To do more than just give them these dull, flat basics and make them feel like if they close their eyes, they can suddenly picture everything and they can reach their hand out and touch things. That's your job. That is not an easy job. Lots of people suck at this job. You can get better at it with practice. You can get better at it by going over it again and again and reading different things and absorbing different traits and asking different questions. But overall, it comes down to you doing stuff over and over until you figure out how you do it better than how you did it before. And it's going to be different than how I do it, and different than how that person over there does it, and different over there to how that person does it. You're going to figure out, ideally, your best way to do this. But that means understanding it's more than just simple statements and paragraphs, and then this happens, and then that happens, and then this happens, and then that happens. The really frustrating part, out of all the people that try to do this, most are going to quit because they're not actually interested in finishing. They just like the idea of being seen as being creative. And some percentage are going to keep trying and bashing their head right up against the wall because they're unwilling to change their practice. They're unwilling to change how they're doing this. They don't want to ask for help. They don't want to put money behind it and really get some training. They don't want to ask questions. They just want to just sort of bull rush ahead, figuring that if they just keep doing what they're doing, eventually, somehow, some way, this cinematic view of things will suddenly break for them. They'll just get it one day. And that's not how this works. Everybody's going to have a different path to reaching that level. Everybody's going to have a different path in general. Some people, some writers right now are not going to make it. They're going to walk away. They're going to give up. They're going to get frustrated. They're going to feel like it's never going to be them. And that's a true loss. That is a definite loss of art. But at the same time, the mistake of, hey, you got to put the reader like they're watching a movie in their brain, that's fixable. It just takes practice and time and effort. You can do that. You should do that. That's the most common problem I see with manuscripts outside of grammar and structure. And even the grammar stuff is like, hey, way too many adverbs, or why are we italicizing literally everything, or parentheticals, stuff like that. And structure is a matter of your paragraphs are too long, your sentences are too long. Sometimes you have a sentence as a giant ass paragraph. Sometimes it's your chapters are too big, meaning you've just got so many things you need to break it up and better organize and pace the story out. Grammar and structure are very fixable problems, and they're endemic. Is that the word I want to use? Symptomatic. They're symptomatic of greater things underneath the surface, but those comparatively are very straightforward fixes. Do this, don't do that, do more of that, do less of this. Straightforward stuff. The harder stuff is getting the writer to understand that they've got to see in their head in an objective way how they're going to translate this, whatever's in here, whatever's in your brain, out to the reader. That's where the hard part comes in. That's where the craft and the talent and the skill kind of pick up and run with it. Great first question. Great first question. Question number 2. Does acting out dialogue in the mirror help it sound more natural? Yes. Yes, it does. However, and it's not even however, kind of like a, hey, one moment, please. You don't have to necessarily always act it out. You could read it aloud and you'll get the same sort of effect. The idea is that you're trying to figure out how it sounds, how it feels. If you want to lean in on a certain word and maybe italicize it in the text, or maybe you want to change a was to a were, or change a this to a that, depending on how you say it, just as you're reading it. But yeah, doing more than just looking at it on the page and making a silent sort of communication between like, yes, it appears visually to be what I want. Making it an extra effort, making it into something making it into some audio, making it into something you can hear, gives your reader and gives your brain a chance to kind of conceive it again in that more cinematic way so that it sounds the way people speak. Because even if you're writing in the most antiquated period piece with historically accurate jargon, you still want to retain some level of structure and sound so that the reader who's reading in the modern day can hear, and I'm making air quotes for the listening people, hear how it should sound. It should sound natural even when the construction, maybe you're doing it all in iambic pentameter. That construction, you don't want that sense to throw people off. You don't want it to be like, why are there all these nice even syllables breaking cadence like this? you don't want that to throw people. So you make sure the dialogue, no matter what, even if it's spoken by aliens, even if it's spoken by, people that don't have mouths, it comes across natural. Acting it out is great. Some people find it very kind of embarrassing, and I believe the kids would call it cringe, but it totally works, and you should do it if you want to try. Otherwise, just even reading it aloud, which is what I would do, because I would get very nervous. I'd get very self-conscious, like, oh shit, my t-shirt has cat hair on it. I can't stand in front of this mirror. I'd freak out. So read it, say it out loud, act it out. If it helps, because it lets you embody the moment, embody the character, absolutely do it. Great question. Question number 3. How do I get better at saying something? Now, I am a huge proponent of saying something. And just so we're clear, let's first define what I mean when I say something. Because it's not just the idea of getting words on the page. We talked about this with the first question. It's not just about, hey, here's a room and there's this furniture and there's that person and the window and the sun and the birds and all that. It's not about just painting the setting and sort of like sketching in the backdrop and giving the reader a static picture of a scene, or even putting a picture in motion and having people come in and talk and say and communicate to one another and then leave the scene and the story moves forward. Saying something is where you do that. You have that scene, you have those moments, you have those sword fights, you have those car chases, you have those tense stare downs, you have the legal battle, you have the dragon fight, you have the whatever the hell you have in your story. But in addition to it being a well-crafted scene where the guy's fighting a dragon or the lady's doing this or the kids are doing that, it also speaks or communicates from you, the author, to the reader. For example, if you have a story of 5 young kids who are roaming the woods on bikes late at night, and they have to expose that the scary monster is really not a scary monster at all, and they're trying to survive the night from the horrible being, what you are saying isn't just, hey, here's a story with some kids and stuff in it. You're trying to communicate that family and friendship is important. You're trying to communicate that there's some deeper meaning, there's some subtext. What you're saying, in essence, is this is how I, the author, insert name here, feel about a particular thing. So when your hero is on their arc and she's, kicking ass and she stands up and she does the right thing in the moment of feeling at her weakest, you, the author, are communicating to the reader, hey, this is how I, the author, insert name here, feel in this situation. This is how I think the world should be. This is how I think characters should be. This is how I think you, the reader, should be. Now, in part of that we identify as theme. But part of that is also you, the author, having that confidence, having that comfort, having that strength and conviction of yourself to do more than just say, well, this is my story where there are ninjas and they attack the people. Say something. Put yourself on a little soapbox. Make a point. Believe in something and express it. Stand up for yourself with that. Yes, you're writing a romance novel, and on some level you're saying, oh, this is how I think heteronormative love should be. Sure, but everybody's saying that with a heteronormative romance novel. That's the whole point of the happily ever after construction. What else are you saying? What else are you communicating that your story and these scenes and these characters and this dialogue and this stuff and this description and this feeling, what is that getting across to the reader? Say something. If you're writing a story about injustice, you're calling it out. Yes, injustice is part of the main plot, but you're also addressing it, because out of all the things you could have written about, injustice, freedom, chickens, chicken fingers, gasoline prices, waffles, whatever, you chose this thing. You chose this injustice. Why? Do something with it. Say something with it. Have a fucking point. Do something useful with it. Don't just say, oh, well, I have a story and it's about 2 star-crossed lovers. Great, sure. I have 15 to 16 pairs of socks in the other room that need to be balled up and put away. Like, what? So what? You don't want to stop at the so what. And it's not a matter of getting that ego pat of like, I'm writing a story. Go beyond both of those things and say something fundamental. Speak to your experience. Speak to your fears. Speak to your strength. Speak to your conviction. Put yourself and put your guts on that page and communicate with other people. Say something. You get better at it by doing it. Not just telling the best A to B to C, fight the dragon, win the day story, but having it mean more, having it matter more than just, oh, these are characters who are doing stuff. Say something. Have a theme. Have multiple, not necessarily multiple themes, but have depth to your theme or themes. Have some subtext. Make a stance. Have some opinions. Express yourself. And if you're saying to yourself, John, I don't know if I can do that. I'm just one person who's young or inexperienced. You have opinions. You have feelings. Communicate them through your art, because they get picked up and transmitted just as much as understanding that your story about the robots, you think all your robots look like sheep. Say something. That's the whole function of art. Okay? Practice. You can do this. Are there, as I get a mouthful of tea, and we'll talk about the tea because it's new. It's not bad. It's not my favorite, but it's not bad. As I get a mouthful of tea, any questions, issues, comments, etc.? The tea, if you're curious, if we're still doing tea updates, it's really floral. It's a local blend I got from, did I get it from a farmer's market? This is either farmer's market stuff from the late summer, or it was food pantry stuff from a couple weeks back. Either way, it's been sitting in one of my little cubbies in my tea caddy for a while, and it's not what I expected. It's not old. It's still pretty fresh, but it's real floral. It's like I've decided to chew on a bouquet. Like, not even a good bouquet. Chew on like a grocery store bouquet. So it's not great, but it's not awful. I'm definitely going to be chugging a large amount of water when that tea runs out to get the sort of like plant flavor out of my face. But it's pretty good tea. In a pinch, yeah, if I drink it fast enough and cold enough, it won't be a problem. Other questions, issues, etc., other things, other feelings, other stuff? Anybody? Else we will march on. All right. Yeah, it's good. It's good to see you too. Hi, I'm doing okay. It's been a day. It's been kind of chaotic. I'm certainly feeling my feelings and I'm present in them, because I'm sure my therapist will check this out at some point. But I'm doing the best I can. It's good to be back. It's good to have a writer's chat in 2023. It's good to be back on track. I'm still nervous, but we're doing okay. On we go. On we go. Question number 4. What's the difference between a fad and a trend? Fads can be thought of as very short-term trends. That's going to be part number 1. Length of time, duration is definitely one of the main criteria for sorting your fads from your trends. Fads, Pogs, Beanie Babies, NFTs, anything that comes, captures consciousness, captures attention, and then kind of evaporates very quickly. Like, and you see this with more mimetic structure. Like, remember that time we were all concerned what color a dress was on the internet? Or everybody wanted to make sourdough bread at the beginning of the pandemic? That's a fad. Those are short-term things that we kind of scratch our heads like, how did this come about? And then it goes as quickly as it arrives, and we just move forward. Those are fads. Fads in writing are usually very short term, and people race to catch them thinking that, oh, well, they're publishing. You see this with, like, zombies was one of the more popular fads, or paranormal romance. Oh my God, there's this media property that's really picking up steam. I better jump out with it and ride that wave along and see where I can go. That's a fad. A trend is a fad stretched over more time and given more meat, given more development. So if we use Beanie Babies or Pogs or like those slap bracelet things, those are fads. But the trends of like loud neon colors or acid washed jeans, those are trends because they persist longer and there's more substance to them, because rather than just being one particular brand of tie Beanie Baby, now it's, you know, a longer stretch of broader appeal things. Trends in writing right now tend to be stuff like pandemic-based stuff or medical tension, the idea of like family and illness and aging and struggle. A common trend outside of writing is that when economic times get tough, people really like tap dancing more. That's a trend. It's been that way for a century because capitalism, honestly. But trends in writing tend to be long-term things that weave through multiple genre and weave into multiple types of writing. You'll see stuff in YA and you'll see stuff in adult and you'll see stuff in early reader, and it all sort of carries along. Like for a while, everybody was telling really, really profound underdog stories, whether it was sports underdog story or romantic love triangle underdog stories or action underdog stories. That's a trend. Trends come and go. Trends are temporary, but they're less temporary or they're longer lived than fads. Fads, it is all practically pointless to include them because what it's going to do is immediately date your manuscript. If you suddenly rock up with a manuscript and you've built your plot very tightly around NFTs, we'll use that because that's a very current fad. In a year or two, when everybody's kind of distancing themselves from Web3 or crypto because of whether it's the fact that, you know, swine go to prison or something, whatever the reason people distance themselves from it, you're locking your manuscript into a certain zeitgeist that is no longer popular. And it can give the impression to a reader, to a pimp, to an editor, to a publisher, to whomever, that you are not current. And it's one thing to be not current, but have universal appeal. Like you can be out here telling modern interpretations of fairy tales, but it's another thing to be not current, but rigidly locked into a thing that has come and gone. It's a delicate balance to strike, but usually it's just about time and sort of sustainability, fads versus trends. Great question. Question number 5. How do I balance fleshing out my protagonist with fleshing out the surrounding or supporting characters? Okay, first of all, of this group, protagonist, we're going to put them on this hand, and everybody else, we're going to put them in this hand. You are going to spend the majority of the time fleshing out the protagonist. Why? Because they're the protagonist. They take center stage. They're the most important character in the book. The supporting and surrounding characters, even if they're the love interest, even if they're the family and the parents and the sidekicks and the whatever else is, they're not going to get the same quantity of words dedicated to their development because they're not the protagonist. Also, in addition to a reduced quantity and a reduced amount of words, they're also going to get lower quality development. I don't mean you're going to write shittier sentences for your sidekick. I mean, you're not going to write the qualities of the sidekick to the same degree that you're writing about the protagonist. You're going to get into your protagonist's issues and melancholies and stresses and traumas and feelings and hopes and goals. We are less concerned with best friend number 2's hopes, dreams, and goals outside of whatever subplot they may be associated with, because they're secondary characters. They are here to service or add functionality to some other part of the story. Here is an example. In a Superman comic book, we mostly don't really care what Jimmy Olsen is thinking. We do if it's related or important to the plot, but by and large, while we're out there reading about Superman saving the planet or whatever, we're not cutting away to Jimmy Olsen wondering, oh man, should I get 1 or 2 hot dogs for lunch today? We're not going to flesh out the surrounding or supporting character to the same degree. So it's not really about balance. There's going to be an imbalance, and it's going to skew towards the protagonist. And those surrounding and supporting characters, they get some development, but it's never going to be to the same degree, and it's never going to be the same amount. Because if you were to try to balance everything out, you're making your supporting character less supporting and more primary, which you don't want to do. So do this critically. Let's call it that. You've got your protagonist. Make sure, above all else, you are fleshing that protagonist out. Not so much as frequently as possible. It's not like every paragraph needs to have a protagonist thing. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how when you have a chance and you're picking between, do I flesh the protagonist or do I develop the supporting character, pick the protagonist. Develop the protagonist as much as you can when you can. And if it makes sense at the time, in the chapter, in the paragraph, in the space, in the whatever, that's when you go say, okay, well, I've already covered the protagonist. We're good on that for a minute. Let me go grab this secondary character and give him something. And that's enough. That's really enough. It's not going to be a balance, and it's going to skew one way over the other. And it can often feel like, man, that supporting character is kind of getting shafted. We're not getting a lot of detail there. Such is the nature of the beast. Like, yeah, they're a supporting character. They're in the background. We don't need to know their great tragedy 10 chapters from now, unless it's a subplot. It can just be a thing that you have in your head that doesn't make it onto the page. But most importantly, don't carry around this idea that everybody, character or not, has to be, equally detailed or given equal time and space, because they don't. That's not going to help you craft a better story in the long run. It's just going to kind of slow you down and frustrate you. Let things be out of balance. It's going to be just fine. And if somebody gets in your ear and says like, hey, I really wish I heard more about such and such and so, your answer should be, cool. Because they're a secondary or a tertiary character. And while it's really nice to have, Jimmy Olsen show up in a Superman comic, it's not Jimmy Olsen's comic. There's a whole separate comic for that. So just pick the one you have, focus to whatever degree you need to, and move on. Great question. Nice, good, technical, chewy question. Oh man, where's this? I still don't have a spice sound, so let's just go with as a spicy sound. What the hell is Reedsy.com, and is it a scam? Followed by, how can I tell if something is a scam or not? Okay. Ooh. Reedsy.com, to the best of my knowledge, is a big giant index that promises to connect people who perform writing services with the writers in need of those services. I'm on Reedsy allegedly, although I don't know if you can search for me. There's some kind of weird shenaniganry where I know I registered for an account, but I never heard back. But I'm on there, but I'm not on there. I know I did the work, but I never heard like, congratulations, you've been accepted or whatever. And that makes me automatically leery because it seems scammy. And to some degree, anything that seems to try and connect those people, whether it's, hey, I have so-and-so and you need so-and-so, anybody who wants to step in there and take a little cut, take a little bit of attention, say, oh, well, I'm the one who connected you guys. That's always going to come across kind of skeevy, right? That's always going to be kind of like, who gives a shit how we got connected? What matters is that we connected. I would not immediately call it a scam, but I would tell you it's a thing you don't immediately need to deal with. Because in my experience, it hasn't done jack fucking shit. And I've been on that site for 5 years? At least pre-pandemic. And it doesn't do anything. Nobody ever rocks up to me and is like, hey, John, I saw you on Reedsy. Great. Cool. Good for you. Like, it's not a scam, but it is not a functional tool to help you grow. Now, I'm sure somebody out there is going to hear about this or listen to this and go, oh, no. I was totally on Reedsy and it completely worked for me. Good for you. I'm happy for you. That's wonderful that this one time, this anecdotal piece of evidence totally worked out for you. Here's my anecdotal evidence. It didn't do jack fucking shit for me. So what do? I shrug and I move on. Let's do your second question. How can I tell if something is a scam or not? Here are the red flags to look for. 1, are they making huge promises that there is no earthly way they can logically deliver on at the timetable or in the way they say they can deliver on them? That's a scam. Are they making giant, grandiose promises about things that'll happen in the future when they very clearly don't have the infrastructure to support it now and seem to have no indication that down the road they're going to be able to suddenly have an app with extra functionality? That's a scam. Are they asking you to, I don't know, pay an exorbitant fee just to be a member of their contest but not actually promise anything? That's a scam. Are they a hashtag event on a social media platform where they can say, hey, the thing you're going to win is a thing you can already do? Guess what? That's a scam too. Are they, a program that takes place over the course of an entire month of 1 year where they advocate the strength of community but fundamentally fail to actually help people do better in writing because all they want to reinforce is the very simplistic idea that you just need to sit down and write and that's all you ever need to do in order to come up with a book? Guess what? That's a scam too. So if they're making big giant swings and they're not paying off, or when you go read the fine print, because there's always some fine print somewhere, and you just think about what they're offering and you think about what they're doing, and it doesn't seem to be anything that you can't already get some other way, shape, or form, that shit is a scam. And I'll leave it at that. Are there any questions? Oh man, that got spicy. Any other questions? Any other issues? Else we will march on. I am going to get flack for that answer. I know somebody out there is going to be like, oh, John. I know. It's on purpose. Oh, man. Questions? Issues? Else we will move on. It was at this point that a question didn't make the cut. It was a question about writing adjacent material and people who offer writing adjacent services. Not so much who directly edit or coach, but more like somebody who sells courses that rehash prepackaged information. There was supposed to be a question here about that. And I'm going to save that for a podcast because, that's a whole rant. But there is a question. It's over here. Have I seen any positive changes in writer behavior since the start of the pandemic? Yeah. What an amazing question. Yes, I have seen some very significant positive changes in writer behavior. One, I'm seeing a clearer division between those people who want to gravitate solely towards the social aspect of writing. They're going to be on the hashtags. They're going to be on the platforms. They're going to talk about their work in progress or their inane bullshit. And they're going to populate that portion of the writing space. They want to talk about the writing in this sort of broad, fun, tee-hee, isn't it neat that we all write the words on pages kind of way? And I've seen that divide grow between them and the people who are actually out doing the writing. They don't have time for the, oh my God, what's your main character's favorite kind of snack? They could give a shit about that kind of thing because there's a growing number of people who are like, I don't fucking know. They're a character in the story and we're over here trying to do this plot thing. So I've seen writers become more serious. I've seen more writers take bigger risks because of the pandemic, because of the work from home, because of the lockdown mentality, because of the isolation. They've decided to channel some of their frustration and their feeling and their loneliness and their time into taking more creative swings. I've seen that discipline kick up for writers and see them start new projects. I've seen more people come back to projects long abandoned or left behind. I've seen people grow more serious. I've seen people more willing to change their mind about how things should be, whether it's a matter of, I should only publish this way, whatever one way is, because it's more legit, all of a sudden now going, gosh, I don't think I have to do it that one way anymore. I've seen huge positive changes from the start of the pandemic. It hasn't been universal. It hasn't been, everybody making some kind of change, but the changes I've seen have been, by and large, if I count them on my fingers, more positives than negatives. Yeah, there's still some negatives. A lot of people they made bigger promises than they didn't deliver on them. They said, oh, I'm going to do this and this and this and this and this, and then didn't. I've seen a lot of writers procrastinate more effectively out of anxiety. I've seen the toll burnout takes. I've suffered the toll that burnout takes. I get it. But by and large, I've seen far more positive change than I have negative change, which is good. And I think in times of challenge or crisis or question, I think that's where we as a collective bunch of beings need to produce more art, because it's through our art that we contextualize and speak to and understand what's going on around us, more than just like, hey, I made stuff, capitalism, you guys, hooray, commodities. I think it's our art, whether it's our murals or our graffiti or our poetry or our sex work or our sculpture or our giant robot stories. I think that's the stuff we use to lens the world. Great question. Oh my God, it's another one. Hello. Having written my own role-playing game. I did write my own role-playing game. You can get it at drivethroughrpg.com. Having written your own role-playing game, and I'm a soon run your own sessions. Yeah, totally super had to run my own sessions and ran my own sessions of not my own game for a while. Would love to do so again, by the way. I'd assume run your sessions of your own. How do you feel these lessons can be applied to game and session writing, coming from the starting place of novel writing? I think, if I may call you Jabba, there's loads of overlap, because while the audience of your novel is a distant person removed in the future, the idea of your audience being those people around either your direct table in front of you, because you're running the game, or people in the future who will buy your game and play it, there's still this level of speaking and getting an idea out of your head across to the audience. And role-playing games in particular have a very cinematic quality, even if there's something very crunchy, right? Even if it's something very like miniatures-driven or rules-driven or sort of top-down dice-based, like one person around the table says, roll me this, do that, and the other players have sort of a reactive relationship with the story they're a part of. I think all of those things mirror a lot of elements when it comes to crafting and playing a game. So it's a matter of figuring out who your audience is. It's a matter of figuring out how to express what it is you want to do in a cinematic way that not only contributes to the overall narrative. I, player number 4 around the table, need to do what I need to do as part of the combat or part of this dialogue scene or part of this moment where we're yammering away with the old sage in the woods. That's going to help not only advance the plot, but also create for me the kind of experience I want. There's a very strong line for me between game and session development and novel writing, because a novel is essentially on some levels a typed transcript of multiple characters playing a game where the rules and the mechanics are disguised. They're just in the action verbs. We get the same sense of failure and success that we see in dice rolling, only instead of a sentence where it's my character, got a 6 on their score or whatever. Instead, you have the sense of, John searched the files for clues but didn't find anything. So you're getting a permutation of that success and failure, and you're connecting with the audience, and you're creating that cinematic atmosphere. I think novel writing can also teach you just a good planning lesson in terms of how to outline and how to shape the idea of a story, but also not be so rigid that when it comes time to execute that story, we're not suddenly locked in and railroading. I think novel writing as a whole can be a great exploration of imagination in the same way that crafting a campaign setting or coming up with mechanics for a game. I think that can really give you the opportunity to come at a story in a different way. If I were a character in this novel, what would I do? Is not that dissimilar from the question of, I'm a player at this table playing this game. What would I do right now? I'm the mage, I'm the detective, I'm the pilot, I'm the bombardier, I'm the whatever I am. What can I do? Not only what do the mechanics enable me to do, but what can I do with the mechanics towards my narrative aims or goals? All those lessons bleed and bend that line between game and novel. I think one makes for a better other. I think if you play some role-playing games of any flavor, whether they are miniatures driven and you got to break out a ruler and a slide rule, or whether there's something very theater of the mind or even LARP, I think all of those things can teach you a lot or inform a lot about how you would craft a story in a more manuscripty novel way, in the same way that writing a novel can not necessarily immediately one-to-one translate to role play, but it can certainly give you a good sense of like, oh, I know how to be a character. I think about character all the time. Or I know how to come up with an action scene because I write them all the time. So there's some overlap, but I think as you dive more into one or the other or both, you can really see benefits for both skills. I hope that answers your question, Jabba. It's an amazing question. Thank you so much for asking it. Great question. Fucking love that question. Have some air horns. Which is also an excuse for me to get more tea in my face. Love that. Shall we move on, though? We have so much more. Question 7. What are some different types of secondary characters to help a protagonist through an arc? Okay, I'm going to make a face right now. Just a heads up, video people. I'm going to make a face. Audio people, imagine the face I'm making. It's not so much about types of secondary characters, though secondary characters do have types. There are helpful secondary characters. There are detracting secondary characters. And depending on how closely you hew to screenwriting and structures, or even bullshitty Jungian archetypes, you can really get lost in the weeds as you start trying to typify certain kinds of character construction. None of this is important. None of this fucking matters. This is just more of that elbow patch tweed, I don't give a shit, I live in my ivory tower view of writing. I don't like it. I went to school for it. It blows. So what I'm going to do instead now, after I'm done making my face, is roll my sleeves up like I do and give you something practical. Your protagonist has an arc, whatever that arc might be. That arc has XYZ number, a certain number of steps along the way. Ideally, it's more than 3, a beginning, a middle, and an end. But it can be 3 or more. That's fine. But you've got a certain number, a beginning, a certain number in the middle, and an end, and you have a chain of events, right? Secondary characters, whomever they might be they the mechanic who fixes the car, be they the best friend who gives the sage advice, be they the wizard who goes fireball and totally smokes somebody, or whether it's the receptionist who answers the phone. It's not so much about the fact that one of them is the wise sage and the other one is the supportive best friend, as though that alone, that knowledge of giving them that label, is everything you need to know about them, because you can play with those labels left, right, and center, because the minute you turn, I don't know, your competitive brother into your antagonist and you're telling a brother versus brother story, you're if we're going to go all the way, your whole drama spectrum shifts and you're allowing to ratchet up the stakes and tension over the course of your action beats. But again, no one cares. That's not a thing. Like it's a thing in the abstract sense, but it's not a material thing that, helps. What you want to look for with your secondary characters, whomever they might be, is how, at the time they show up in the story, what help or what hindrance are they providing the protagonist? If they're only there to help, how are they helping? How convenient is that help? How difficult is that help? How hard do they have to work for that help? Is it a fair exchange? Is it, I'm going to help you, but it's going to cost you? That matters. That kind of thing matters. But it's not so much, why is my camera doing that? It's not so much about, I'm just going to nuke the camera for a minute, guys. It's not so much about the idea that the protagonist has certain functionaries behind him in order to do this. It's how is the secondary character helping? That's always going to get you much further than identifying the type of secondary character, because ultimately no one cares. It doesn't matter how you're labeling them. It matters what they do in the story. There's a question in chat I want to answer. You've been talking about loops on the podcast in the last month. Yes, recently I also just talked about containers. If you don't like the loop theory, go with containers. But okay, what's the difference between a loop and an arc? There is no functional difference between a loop and an arc, other than the way you literally diagram on paper is you draw a different shape. An arc can be a loop. Here's the hard part with loops. Here's the tough, tricky thing. I start talking about loops and people start thinking about just circles, or they start thinking about curly cues and twists and corkscrews. And the shape of the thing is not always the most important part of this visualizing metaphor thing. It doesn't matter if it's a loop that begins and ends at the same point. There are some arcs that do that. That's a thing. However, roller coaster loops, you don't have to. A loop is just an up and around and a down, right? Make a loop with your finger. You don't always have to end up at the same place you start because you're drawing an invisible thing in three-dimensional space. There's no difference, though, between a loop and an arc. I don't regret teaching loops. Loops are a useful way of contextualizing the portions of an arc. Like we have an arc idea, we build up, so we go upward with our loop. Let me see if I can turn the camera back on without it being all glitchy and shitty. Okay, so no, it's still being glitchy and shitty. We're turning the back off. So imagine a clock face. We're going to do this all in audio. Imagine a clock face. Our loop starts at 6, right? The bottom of the clock. And we're going to go counterclockwise because that's the way I'm drawing it in my head. So as the loop ramps up, as the arc picks up momentum, as we get going on the loop, we're going to move from 6 to 3. And as we build up and we get to the arc's crisis point, the moment of highest concern, that arc is going to jump up from 3 to 1. And at 1, that's more or less the climax of this arc, right? It's the highest point. And then everything from there, it's going to ratchet back down until it reaches some kind of conclusion from 1 to 9. And then from 9, anywhere down from 9 to 6, it's going to wrap up. It is not a complete perfect circle. It is not bringing us back to the exact same point every time, all the time. It's just that we went up, we peaked, and we came back down. It's an arc. Whether we want to draw it as a circle or whether we want to draw it as a pyramid or whether we want to draw it in some kind of sawtooth, bread knife, serrated kind of thing, it's entirely up to you. But there is no functional difference between loops and arcs, which is why, most recently on the podcast, I started talking about containers. And you might want to think about a box with little boxes in it, because it's the same idea, just presented in a different way. Don't get hung up on the jargon and the visual components of the metaphor. Think about what it does and what it means for your story. It's a great question. I'm so glad. Thank you so much also for giving me a chance to explain loops and arcs for, I guess it's like the 10th time, but hopefully it's clearer now than it was before. Let's go on to the next question. Let's see. Is the camera doing any better? The camera's doing better. Okay. It's because I have the camera plugged into a hub rather than directly into the back of the machine because I'm out of plugs in the machine. So here we are all the same. What are the ethical concerns around using AI to write my book? Again, making a face, audio people. Here's the thing. You can totally go ahead and use AI, ChatGPT, to go write your book. Go ahead. Go ahead. If that's a thing you want to do, sure, do it. If your main primary concern with writing a story is that it just takes too long, go ahead. Go right ahead. Please, by all means, expedite your process like every other tech bro who's just out there to crush it so that you can produce a commodity so that capitalism can exploit you, so that you can have some kind of vain, generally white, patriarchal sense that you won the contest that no one else is playing in because you got done your thing first. Good job. Get a pat on the head. On you go. Neat. However, and this is significant, the point of making a book wasn't just to get it done in the most expedient, generic, bland way possible. If you've ever played around with ChatGPT or any of the other AI that are out there, they're not human. There's a stiffness and a sort of falseness to how they write. Yeah, it sort of sounds like a person in the same way that when my camera was shitty in the last question, it kind of looked like a picture, but it wasn't entirely natural. And you, a human who's been exposed to story and communication for however long you've been alive, you can pick up on that. The ethical concerns of using AI to write your book are numerous, in the same way that there are ethical concerns about using AI to generate art, because that AI pool has to draw from somewhere. For the case of art, DeviantArt and other related websites are getting fucking sued because they opened up their banks and archives so that AI could draw on other people's made things so that you could get a really nice profile picture on your social media. Because you're a lazy piece of shit who didn't want to spend any money and couldn't just be content with the art you had. So rather than help an artist succeed in the world, you took the lazy shit ass way out and made a robot do your work for you. So again, here we are. Now, instead of drawing on an archive of other people's art, now you're going to write a story. Where do you think the AI is going to get the material? From all the other accessible texts that somebody else wrote. Here's the ethical concern. Are you okay with that? Do you not give a shit about other people's hard work that you can turn around and go, yeah, totally take from that. God, take from that. Or write me a story that sounds like that. Go ahead. If you're okay with that, one, you're a piece of shit. You're just a flat out piece of shit and I want nothing to do with you. And two, you completely don't understand the point of writing a book in the first place, do you? The whole point of writing a book, like we talked about several questions ago, was having something to say. You having your own idea and wanting to communicate it to other people. So why on earth would you look for a thing that's going to not do that for you? Because it's hard? Because it takes time? Because you're just scared of whatever happens? Well, what if I write it and they don't like it? That's the whole point of art. Not everybody's going to like it. We're not making widgets at the factory. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be uniform and the same as the other 5 widgets that come off the assembly line. You're making your thing. The primary ethical concern about using AI is, what does that say about you and your willingness to allow something that isn't you to be creative in your stead? The supplemental ethical concern is, where do you think the AI is gathering the language examples? Where do you think the AI is drawing from as its resource pool in order to accomplish these tasks? It's over there with Gutenberg. It's over there with the Internet Archive. It's over there with access to God knows how many other things, and it's just drawing on that content so that you can type a thing in a box and go, hey, could you write me 30,000 words about a romance story where there's a fireman and a lady? And you're okay with that? You don't want to stop for a minute and go, hey, that sounds like I'm taking art out of somebody else's pocket for my own gain. Yeah, that's what you're doing. Now, how do I put this mildly, as if I haven't been spicy enough already? There's some concern that people are like, well, you shouldn't use AI because you'll lose your copyright. Again, imagine the face I'm making, audio people. If your biggest concern is the copyright, you're missing the boat on this. Fuck copyright. Yes, it's an issue. Absolutely, it's an issue. But the bigger concern is that you're willing to use this to produce art. And is it really art if a resource is stealing art from somebody else and reassembling it? How much art are you comfortable with that? How much art is that really? If I take you right there, I'm pointing at you. Come here. If I ask you to draw me a picture for free, just like sketch me something. And then I take a pair of scissors and I chop it up into pieces and I paste it all around so it's in different pieces. You know that the puzzle where you slide the squares around? Like if I reassemble this thing, scotch tape it all together, put it in a frame, can I call that my art? I did very little effort compared to what you were doing. You did all the drawing, but I clipped it and I put it in a frame. I had the idea. I'm exploiting your art. I'm being a good capitalist piece of shit. So aren't I making art? If you write me a story, a simple story, if you tell me the story of the Three Little Pigs, and I take it and I take your story and all I do is change the name from each of the pigs and I name them after people I used to work for in retail, and I suddenly publish this book where now instead of Three Little Pigs, it's three bullshit managers at the mall. I didn't do nearly as much work as you, but did I make art? Or did I just take advantage of you? You did all the work. You don't get any of the profit. I don't even acknowledge you. I just took what you gave me and I ran with it. Am I okay? Can I sleep at night? Can I be a good person thinking that I'm okay with that kind of art production? Because to me, John over here, I think if you reach for those resources, be it Grammarly, Writer Pro Aid, ChatGPT, OpenAI, any shit like that, go learn basket weaving. Go away. You're not Lenza, all that shit. It's fun and it's cute. Oh, isn't that lovely? But what are you doing? I thought the point was art. I thought you had something to say. I thought you had value to contribute to this. But if you're just going to grab a machine or grab a tool and have a tool produce everything for you, where's the you in your art? That for me is the greater ethical concern. Everything else is just playing dress up with that. So am I worried that ChatGPT is going to write some books? Yeah, I'm sure somewhere there's some scum-sucking pig who's going to be out there writing, just having ChatGPT churn out cheap, low-effort, low-budget content and flooding the self-pub market or flooding the self-help market. Is that a concern? Yes, and the fact that it's going to be harder for people to parse the signal from the noise. And that sucks because it's already happening in a lot of spaces, including writing coaching. Because loads of people are just like, tell me 5 things about how to write a book. And then they extrapolate that into some bullshit and charge $19, $29, $39 for it. And people who are genuinely looking to be helped go with it. And that sucks. It's not a crime because capitalism enjoys profit as a mode of existence, but it's shitty behavior and we should not reward it. It should not persist. But to me, those are the ethical concerns around using AI to do goddamn anything. And I say this as somebody who uses AI or machine learning as part of the software he uses to edit his podcast to help collapse some of the ums and the uhs and the long pauses while I talk. One's a tool that I apply to assist my own labor and help get across and communicate what I made with no other resource and no other fudging. And the other is taking advantage of other people and then slapping my name on it. What are you comfortable with? You have to sort that out for yourself. Great question. On we go to the next. We're just more spice. Just more spice everywhere. Is there, question number 9, is there / should there be a divide between queer and straight writing? Well, is there a divide? Yes. Should there be a divide? I am going to say no, there should not be a divide. Because while the division between queer and straight can, for some people, at some times, in some ways, be a useful distinction, there are also times where it can be weaponized and it can create an us versus them that rather than see how we can grow closer together or overcome biases or reconnect and recontextualize and grow in empathy and compassion, we end up having this sort of defensive stance of like one side versus the other. And that divide's not a great divide. Now, if you're wondering, well, what does this have to do with writing? Again, I'm going to point you to our old friend capitalism that wants to make hay and profit out of the idea that we have a shelf for queer writing, as though it's this, oh my God, queer writing. It's like, oh my God, they have those green bananas I like, as if it's something exotic, fetishized, objectified, and in the minority. Because I don't know if you know this, but there are a lot of people across many different ranges of sexualities and identities and genders and persuasions and flavors and types that don't fit easy categorization and also don't give a shit about categorization. The argument of should there be a divide is so frequently centered around the idea that if there's no divide, somebody's getting silenced, somebody's getting relegated to the side, somebody's specialness is being overlooked, somebody's getting minimized or pushed to the back rather than the front. And the only reason why that's even part of the discussion is because for too long, one group of people, hint, it's the straights, spent a lot of time, effort, money, power, etc., keeping anything that wasn't them to the back. So yes, in that case, by establishing this divide and then promoting things beyond just the straightness of stuff, you get a chance to see more and more queer writing, queer writers of any alphabet and any identity and any type come to the forefront. And that's how it's supposed to be, because it's not just straight people making art. Every human makes art no matter how they identify. It's just a matter of giving them space to do so. Part of that butts up against capitalism because, oh my God, we've decided to turn art into a profit thing. But part of that also turns into just let other human beings fucking make art. It can be that simple. It's really okay. There's still plenty of room for your stuff if somebody who's different from you also makes stuff. It's not a scarcity issue. It's just a, hey, move over, let someone else step next to you kind of a thing. I don't think there should be a divide. I don't know if I will live long enough for there to be no division whatsoever. I would love that. That would be awesome. But I don't think it's coming in my lifetime. I think for as long as we have a combination of capitalism and traditional publishing, we're going to see that divide because a number of people in positions of authority and power like the divide because the divide is their current status quo and people in charge tend to not want to change their status quo. I don't want there to be a divide because I think the idea of queer and straight is a division we will be tough to shake because I'm not saying it's the wrong identity to be queer. It's fine to be queer. It's good to be queer. I think, though, we need to at times also recognize that you're a person. Everybody's a person, whether queer, straight, leaning, curious, or otherwise. Everybody's a person and everybody makes art. And yeah, we can identify it as straight, not straight, but by and large, that is one label, not the sole label we can apply because you also make science fiction, not romance, or fantasy, not science fiction, or historical drama versus Westerns or whatever else. So I want there to reach me personally in the utopic view I have of the world. I want there to be just writing. Ideally, if we're going to have any kind of like structure to it, it's good writing versus not good writing or finished writing versus unfinished writing. But I think truly and sincerely, I don't want any voice marginalized. I mean, other than like shitty voices. And we're not talking about, like, that's obvious, right? We all get that. I'm not saying like, let's give them a chance because fuck them. They're fucking fascists and Nazis and they should get nothing. But like somebody writing saucy lesbian fantasy novels has just as much validity as the straight woman in Paducah writing her heteronormative romance novel. Like, there's plenty of room at the table for everybody to be awesome. And as long as we show solidarity with each other and give each other the ability to be raised up and benefited from all our collective experience and all our collective wisdom and all our collective skill and talent, there's no reason to maintain a divide. But again, a lot of that divide is predicated on commerce and ignorance. And the idea that, oh, well, if I'm making a division, there must be a reason for it. Oh, you're queer. Ooh. Or, oh, it's a trans story. Oh, that they must be they're just a story. It's just a story. Like, the divisions are at some point fruitless, and I don't want them to be there, but they are there for right now. I don't think they're good. In terms of using it as a way of claiming identity, I get it, I understand, but at the same time, you're only claiming that identity because the division exists in the first place, and you've previously been marginalized. And that's the problem. That's the thing to address. Like, let's go throw rocks at the people who marginalized you. I'll hand you some rocks. I got a whole bag in the other room. Like, let's go. That, I think, is the more significant point. I might be wrong. I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing to be, I'm willing to have a better discussion about it. I'm willing to get, that's what the Discord's for. You want to come at me? Come at me. I got more than enough time and space. I would be happy to hear more points of view on this. But by and large, for me, I don't think the divide, I want there to be a point where there's no longer a divide. And I want there to be a point where there's no divide socially. And I want there to be no reason for a divide commercially. People should just make what they want to make no matter who they are. And we should all stand up and fight against the shitty people. How's that? That's where I want to go. Let's get there. On to the next question. Are there any more things from chat as I sit here and finish off this tea, which as it's been sitting has taken on like way more floral, and it kind of tastes a little like old lady perfume. You know that shit like grandma would wear at like functions? It kind of tastes like I'm drinking that. Like, it's not great. I'm just going to chug this in a hot second and then we're going to move on. But are there any questions while I'm chugging this? I'm just going to pull the mic so that you don't have to hear me do this. Hang on. God, that was repellent. That was fucking awful. Okay. All right. There was a question while I was chugging. Thank God. I put out blog articles, Substacks, etc. Is there a specific time of day I should release them? I don't feel like midnight releases are hitting. Okay. Yes, there is a particular time. No, that time is not universal relative to who or what you are. Every platform, blog, Medium, Substack, Blogspot, whatever, WordPress, newsletter, Ghost, whatever you're producing has an ideal time. And part of that's going to be informed by if you're going to another platform that is not yours, like your Medium or your Substack or something like that. If you're using somebody else's platform and you've got space on it, their platform's going to have ideal traffic time. I can tell you right now, Medium, if you're not a fairly consistent Medium producer, as I talked about in today's blog post, am not a really consistent Medium producer because I've shifted more into podcasting. I am a consistent podcaster more than I am a consistent Medium blogger, which sucks, at least until I learn how to monetize the podcast. But the point is that every platform is going to have its own sort of cycle. Part of that's out of your hands because it's determined by how their algorithm and their setup works. Medium, for instance, tends to do better in the middle of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, for the majority of writing-based writing stuff. So blog posts about that. Substacks tend to do better, at least according to their own metrics that they've mentioned, on Tuesdays and Fridays. I'm not sure how they're making those distinctions, but they're making those distinctions. Here's the part that's under your control, the time of day. Because while the algorithm can dictate, here's the day of the week, this would do best to get the most eyes, the time of day is about you understanding when your audience best accesses stuff. For me, I tend to release stuff between midnight and 2 a.m. Why? Because most of my readership, to the best of my knowledge, wakes up somewhere between 6 and 8 a.m. And one of the first things they do is check their email. At the beginning of their day, I want them reading or hearing my stuff. The reason my podcast comes out at 12:15 in the morning is not because I want people to be awake at 12:16 so that hey guys, the new John shit dropped. It's because that way I know it hits podcast feeds in the morning. so that you could start your day listening to me, because I'm that kind of arrogant person, and I want to be one of the first people you talk to every goddamn day because I didn't get enough hugs as a child. But you can control the time of day by just being declarative about it. If you think midnight releases aren't hitting, one of the best things you can do is ask your audience, hey, when do you read my stuff? Now, if your audience is pretty small, like under 1,000 people, you can pretty quickly get a sense of when you think it should drop. And if you have an audience that's very small but not very communicative, like you'll ask questions and you'll just get crickets, then you get to decide. If you think midnight's not working, try earlier in the day. Try, if you write it on a Monday and Tuesday morning midnight isn't working, try Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Or if it's midnight, if it's an issue of I write it the same day, then whenever you write it, release it. Part of that's going to come from conditioning your audience to expect, hey, it's this day, that's when this stuff comes out. And then giving yourself a variable window as to when. I, for instance, subscribe to a newsletter that I know comes Thursday, but because the writer of the newsletter is in a foreign country, I have to account for time change. So they're 5 hours ahead of me. So I already know that when I'm seeing it, they're in the future because of time travel. But at the same time, I also know that that newsletter is being written at a different time. I might not always get it at 1 p.m. Eastern. I might get it at 1:30. I might get it at 2, but I know I'm always going to get it on Thursday. Focus more on consistency on your end, and the readership will pick it up no matter what. But if you're definitely positively sure that midnight releases aren't doing what you want, the question is, what other time would you like to put them out? And 2, what metric are you using to determine whether or not they're hitting? If it's a matter of looking at page views and I'm not seeing page views, well, page views aren't dependent on time. Because if I look at a website at 9 a.m. and you look at a website at 10 a.m., those are still page views. Don't get lost in the hours as though there's a magic specific super clock all the time. It might be an issue of you just need to get more out, or it might be an issue of you're rolling stuff out on the wrong day independent of time, or you picked midnight and it just gets lost in the shuffle. So maybe if you shifted it to 7 a.m., you won't get lost. It's sort of like when we judge how we travel. We don't want to get stuck in like rush hour traffic. You're getting lost in overnight traffic. You might want to try shifting up a few hours so that you're ahead of rush hour or after rush hour. But even that metaphor doesn't entirely work because a lot of that time setting is of your own choice. Check your expectation. See what you're trying to get. And if you're looking for an immediate response, I write a thing and I want somebody to jump on it. In the Eastern time zone, midnight is not necessarily the best choice because a lot of the people who you would probably want to read it, they've gone to bed or they're doing other things. So consider where you think your audience is at the time you want to release things and adjust accordingly. I love a good technical time question. Thanks for it. Anything else? Else we will march on. I am so glad to be done with that cup of tea. Oh yeah, water all the way. Should have just done water from the beginning, John. All right, on we go. Question, man, we're just handing out spice left, right, and center. Question 10, what do I do when I feel I've peaked as a writer? Oh, imagine the face I'm making right now, audio people. Okay, if you've really and truly peaked, here's how you know you've peaked as a writer. When no matter what you produce, whether you write 1,000 words, 100,000 words, you write all day, you write every day, you and the people around you who give you feedback can find no demonstrable difference. They can't tell your Monday shit apart from your Tuesday shit anymore. They're not seeing progress over the longer scale. Like the stuff you wrote 6 months ago sounds and looks exactly the same like the stuff you wrote last week. That's not so much peaking as it is plateauing. Peaked as a writer is basically the idea that I'm trying to find a softer metaphor than what I was going for. It's basically saying that your best day is behind you as a writer. And if that's the case, I feel very sorry for you, because it's probably not true, but it's something you're in the middle of convincing yourself is true. Peaking as a writer generally refers to accomplishment rather than effort, meaning like you wrote a book and it had X number of sales and you're not so sure you'll ever get back there again. That's a peaking kind of question, and that's more a function of how are you doing in growing your marketing. It's less about the quality of your writing and more about how you're getting that writing out there. Are you seeing more and more new people with it? If you're talking about the talent and skill as a writer, like it just doesn't feel the same anymore, because when I was first doing this first book, it was exciting and I didn't know what I was doing and I was carefree and I was just writing to write and I didn't get bogged down in the bullshit of the business and I was just making shit up and it felt loose and free. And now that I'm kind of like in 2 or 3 books deep, I know more about the business. I know more about audience. I got to be mindful about this and this and this and this and this, and all that shit I didn't know before has pulled some of the fun, air quotes, away. You haven't peaked. You've just matured. And understanding that you can detach that fun and newness from skill is what helps you become a better writer, so that peaking goes away. Because now, instead of just writing in that unrestrained, wild, I don't know any better, so no one's fucking stopping me, you can turn it into, now I know the rules. Now I know what I shouldn't do. Now I know what I can do. So I can still be unrestrained, but I can be unrestrained with more talent. If you're really worried that you've peaked, come talk to me. Go talk to a coach. Go talk to someone whose job it is to help and assist writers get forward. Not just finish their manuscript, not just get a copy edit, but go talk to a human being who has skill and training in the ability to help you get past whatever block you've put in front of yourself so that you can do better. The thing I want you to not do, here's the thing to avoid. Do not quit. Do not walk away. Do not just say to yourself, I peaked, fuck it, I'm done. With no evidence, with no structure, with nothing to support it other than the same kind of hazy gut feeling that, yeah, it feels like I peaked because it doesn't feel the same anymore. It's never going to feel the same anymore. You're not the same person you were when you started. That's how time works. That's how skill works. It's a matter of finding the next thing, the new thing that pushes you, the new thing you want to communicate, the new way you want to communicate. And it's about challenging and pushing and trying. It isn't always going to be this external new thing like, oh, last week I tried, rock climbing, and this week I'm trying stamp collecting, and next week I'll try bird calling. It's not always going to be a rush of new things. It's not always going to be Christmas Day. Part of being a writer isn't so much thinking about your writing talent in some finite way, like I only have 60 days to write this book, or I only have X amount of writing energy to expend, and then once I'm done, I'm done. It's not like that at all. Part of the whole act of writing is knowing that you can dig into yourself and always find something new to say, because during the course of the production of whatever you're writing, you've been growing as a person. You've been educating yourself. You've been fucking around and finding out. You've been thinking, you've been planning, you've been plotting, you've been listening, you've been caring, and you've got this constantly evolving and constantly growing wellspring to tap. So peaking, what this question screams to me is, hey, you need to do more non-writing stuff. I don't just mean like go to the gym or walk around the block. Drink some water might not be a bad idea, but by and large, grow. Watch some shit, read some shit, ask some questions, do some different stuff. Have a brownie, get laid, dance like no one's watching. Live, laugh, love. Whatever Pinterest level aphorism is going to make you feel happy and giggly in this moment. There's always a chance to grow and push yourself. You just have to go out and look for them. You probably haven't peaked. You're just not getting the same like dopamine fix you were getting before. Don't confuse the two. They're not the same thing. Dopamine comes and goes because it's a brain chemical. Skill and discipline are going to carry you much farther, and you'll get more out of this whole activity. Thank you for the tip, by the way. You're amazing. I love you. You're going to get way more out of the consistency and the production than you ever are by chasing the dopamine, because dopamine goes away. I can tell you that right now. I've been talking for an hour and 24 minutes. The dopamine has long since fled, and I'm doing this entirely because I love to do this. On we go to the next question. Question number 11. Man, so much spice. Is the spark of inspiration, first of all, can we just say ugh to that phrase? The spark of inspiration, the same as motivation to write? No, it's not. You're chasing dopamine in a whole different way. Hang on, mouthful of water. All right, look, the spark of inspiration is a fleeting thing in the same way that eventually when you light a match, it burns out. The spark of inspiration is designed to get you started one time. Motivation to write is keeping that fire going. So, yeah, you only need to light the fire once, ideally, but you got to fuel it. You got to keep putting more wood in. You got to make sure there's enough airflow, make sure there's enough material to burn, right? I'm going to sneeze. I'm going to try not to do it on camera or into the microphone. The motivation to write should be a long-term thing. It should be this thing that happens far longer than the spark. Because what happens when the spark leaves? And all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, the spark was great because it got me my first 10 pages, but now I'm on page 11. What the shit do I do? You write. Welcome to the job. Hi, good to see you. Sparks only carry you so far. And if you're forever chasing sparks, you're writing in the sense that you are producing words, but your craft is not yet been engaged. You're moving along in first gear when the car is groaning and lurching, trying to like pick up speed and pick up momentum. And you've got to shift along with it. The spark of inspiration is great when you're young and you don't give a shit because everything feels inspiring because your brain isn't done fucking cooking. And motivation seems really easy because it's fun and you don't know any better. But motivation also requires discipline and organization, and that can make sparks a lot less fun because all of a sudden this fun, cool thing I was just doing to fuck around suddenly turned into like a job or something. Well, art is a job. It's not the same kind of job where you wear a suit and a tie and you tuck your shirt in, but it's still something you have to show up for and commit to and do your best with as much as you can every time you can. That's significant. That's a thing. So it's not the same as motivation to write. Or if it is, it's motivation one time. But a motivated writer will far outstrip a sparked, inspired writer every time. No matter what you're writing, no matter if they're writing the same thing, no matter if they're co-authors, doesn't matter. Sparks are short term, motivation's long term. You develop one, you chase the other. Great question. On we go. Oh, more spice. Good grief. Question 12. What annoys you most about self-pub authors? Whew. Okay. What annoys me the most? I'm trying to prioritize. I mean, there's not many things that annoy me about self-pubbing authors, so to come up with like a ranking list, I'm sure there's somebody somewhere who's surprised that not a lot of things annoy me about self-pub authors, because it's not like a broad category. I'm not annoyed by them in the same way I am conceptually annoyed by pimps, agents. I'm more annoyed at a certain attitude that some, not all, self-publishing authors have, that the whole point is to just produce a thing and then just get it out. Like, I don't need it edited. I don't need a lot of structure. I don't need a lot of education when it comes to marketing. I just need to write a thing and go. Like we're still in that whole mindset of I'm making widgets at the widget factory, but instead of it being like the widgets the man wants, it's widgets I want. And this idea that you don't need to apply a lot of structure to it and you don't need to concern yourself with any kind of rules. And I don't mean that in like an anarchic kind of, well, I can do whatever the fuck I want way. I mean like I mean more like it's okay to be poorly disciplined. It's not a matter of telling the best story with the best composition. It's a matter of just producing a story. You can as if self-pub will allow you to get away with the idea that poor characters are fine. Because I'm self-publishing. It doesn't really matter. Like, that's the attitude I can't stand. The idea that you are not responsible for quality just because you're self-publishing. That those things like theme and those things like subtext and nuance are the purview of the ivory tower crowd. And that's not you, man. You're punk. You don't want to sell out. You just want to tell your story about techno samurai and all your other fetishization and objectification of other cultures. You just want to like do your thing, man. You don't care about like how fucking flashbacks work. You just want to like have this anime but on paper in your head. And that irritates the shit out of me, because no matter how you publish, you're always responsible for what you produce, because your ultimate goal should be putting your stuff, whatever it is, in front of other people and having them enjoy it. And if you've produced this thing that nobody can figure out like what it is or where it is or how they should engage with it, they're not going to enjoy it. And you are not absolved of that responsibility just because you decided to put your stuff on Amazon rather than, deal with the rejections and bullshit of the gatekeepers. So that annoys me the most. This idea that you are freed from responsibility and freed from the necessity of, telling a story and knowing how the parts work. That's what annoys me most about self-pub. That sort of self-important, I don't need help with this, I just do it. Look, you need help. You might need more help than other people. You might need less help than people, but you need help. That attitude annoys me. And it's not even, just so we're clear, this is not coming from a stance of, well, yeah, if you don't get help, I don't get paid. Because you don't have to hire me for that. You can hire anybody for that. Hopefully you don't hire a piece of shit grifter or anything. But it's not about, it's money out of you're making it hard for me to have a living. It's fine. I just want you to get the help you need to get where you want to go and do what you want to do. And I think I can do a better job at helping you than anybody else you talk to. But I still want you to get help. I still want you to recognize that even though you're going to put this on Amazon and put it out into the world your way on your own terms, you still have to know how to do the thing. Like, a bad book on Amazon is no different than a bad book traditionally published. It's just one's digital and I read it on my little device, and one's a book I hold in my hand. You still have to be good at this no matter how you publish. That's what annoys me. Let's go on to one more. Question 13. Build me a marketing plan for February. All right, cool. Difficulty. I am a science fiction fantasy writer with no newsletter and an incomplete manuscript. There's not enough water in this big giant Yeti thing for me to express to you the frustration this question immediately makes me feel. All right, let's go. Step number 1, problem number 1. Your manuscript is incomplete. There's not a lot we can do until that manuscript is complete. There's stuff we can do, but your job number 1 over the course of February is to finish your goddamn manuscript. We are not able to move real forward in substantial ways without it. So step 1, we have to come up with a plan for you to finish your manuscript. Now, in this hypothetical example, I'm assuming it's hypothetical. Let's say, we decide that you're going to write every other day until you finish your book. So there's 28 days in this February. It's not a leap year. Let's assume it's 28 days. I don't really care. So you're going to write every other day. So you're going to have 14 writing days in the month. Great. So if there's 14 writing days and 14 not writing days, we're going to mark it on the not writing days. Straightforward. Seems pretty easy. I'm a science fiction writer with no newsletter. Well, okay, newsletters are not mandatory. They're a useful tool when you develop them and when you use them, but you don't always only have to have a newsletter. You could have a blog. You could have a podcast. You could have an Etsy store. You could do TikToks. You could do Instagram posts. You could do loads of things. You don't have to do any one thing. It's not like somebody hands you a check, like you're ticking a box, right? But we can mark it on one day and write on the next. Now, here's what we're going to do for this marketing plan. Everybody with me still so far? We're all nodding our heads like we get this, because we're going to pick up a little bit of speed and a little bit of momentum here. So let's assume we're going to market on the odd days and write on the even days every other day. You get what I'm saying? So first is a marketing day, second's a writing day, third's a marketing day, fourth is a writing day, and so on all the way through the month. One of the nice things about having an even number of days is that John can do this math pretty quickly. So here we go. Day one, what are we going to say? Day one, our marketing plan is going to be, we're going to choose what platform we're going to use, because there's a platform out there somewhere that plays to your strengths, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Mastodon, whether it's, what's the bullshit one? Hive Social, whether it's Counter Social, whether it's, I don't know, insert thing here. There's a Ghost, a Substack, a blog post, a Medium, anything. On that day one, you're going to figure out what platform you want to use based on the strength you have. So maybe we're going to have a conversation about what that strength is individually, but you're going to pick a platform, and you're going to pick one that you have the least amount of stress to regularly use, because you're about to use it every other day. So you're going to pick this platform. And then you're going to use this first day of marketing to talk about what you're about to do for the next 28 days. I'm going to put you on the hook to follow through with this, and we're going to use your marketing strategy, your social, your blog, your whatever. We're going to use that to keep you accountable. So let's say, just for the sake of argument, your preferred thing is Instagram, and you're going to use Reels, let's say. I don't know, because it's popular. So on day one, you're going to choose Instagram, and you're going to create a reel saying, hey, everybody, I'm about to spend the next 27 days writing or marketing. You can follow along. Here's what we do. Here's my plan. Every even day of this month, I'm going to be writing something, and every odd day this month, I'm going to talk about what I wrote. Not so much like read it to you verbatim, because you can buy the book for that, but I'm going to engage with you in some way about my writing. Talk about how easy it is. Talk about how hard it is. Talk about if I'm nervous about it. Talk about if I'm hyped for it, whatever it might be, so that every day I'm either talking about what I'm producing or I'm producing it. The most effective marketing plan is not the marketing plan where you jam your day with literally everything so that there's no breathing room. The best marketing plan, no matter what it is we're marketing, is the one where you can engage with it consistently and regularly do more with it. Meaning, I'm going to talk about it every day, and then I'm going to share that stuff and get the word out. So I'm on my Instagram, I got my Reels, I'm holding my phone, I'm doing my thing, I'm talking as I walk around my house. Well, here comes day two. Day two, I start writing. Whatever structure and discipline you need to engage for that writing, you do on day two. Do we jump on social media? No. Why? Because it's an even day, and we decided our even days were writing days. So on day two, we just write. I'm not saying you can't check Twitter when you go to the bathroom. I'm just saying we're not going to spend as much time on it as we do the other days. Then we get to day three. Well, now we have something to talk about. Hey, you guys, let me tell you what I just worked on last night. It was really exciting to do. I'm really nervous, but here's the rough gist of my story. It's a story about a guy who thinks he's a bear, but there are also giant robots roaming the countryside, or whatever the hell your story is about. You don't have to get into names. You don't have to dive deep in the plot. We got 26 more days, 27 more days of this to go. You are totally allowed to just kind of breadcrumbs, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there. With me so far? That's day three. Now we're back to day four. It's a writing day. We just keep producing the story, however much, whatever we got to do. Next marketing day. Hey, you guys, let me tell you what went on last night. Check this out. Here's what's up. This happened. My story's got this and it's got that. I wanted to stay away from this. I'm worried about that. My story's closing in on X number of words. I'm thinking I'm going to publish it this way, so that every day you market, you've got something to talk about, because Instagram Reels, the thing we picked, work best when they're used consistently, unlike a newsletter or a podcast. Well, a newsletter or a Substack or some podcasts where you want to do it every Friday or whatever. Some people do. That's fine. But consistency helps your marketing. And then it's just a matter of, I've recorded my reel. Now I'm going to get it out. So I'm going to make sure I'm growing my Instagram, make sure I'm using Instagram and its algorithmic strength to help me grow. So I'm going to follow more people on Instagram. I'm going to reply to more things on Instagram. I'm going to engage with people so that they reciprocally see my stuff. Over and over, we're just going to do the same thing. If we're talking about a blog and not Instagram, then we're going to reply to people's comments. We're going to leave the door open for, hey, leave some comments down below. Let me know what you think. And then you're going to follow other blogs and do the same thing. And you're going to find communities and spaces where you can talk about your shit and they can talk about their shit. And maybe we can get some conversation going. We do that every other day for February. By the time February's done, you'll have a couple things. One, you will have started a marketing campaign. It might not be complete. Your book might not be sold and ready to go out the door, but you've at least greased the wheels and gotten things moving. And two, you finished the goddamn book. Why did we want to do it in this way? Why do it in this order? Because one, a finished book is infinitely more marketable and you can move forward in the process with it. You can go get a cover if you're going to self-publish it. You can go get it edited. You can go find a pimp and get exploited and traditionally publish it, whatever you want to do. You can do stuff like that. But it won't matter if you don't finish the book, if you don't finish the manuscript. And it doesn't matter if you're a science fiction or fantasy author. It's not like you're going to do any different than the romance authors or the hardcore erotica authors or the who knows whatever else kind of authors. It's just a matter of, what do I talk about? How do I engage people? Then I produce more stuff. Then I engage more people over and over. That's your marketing plan for February. Does anybody listening to this right now have any questions about what I just laid out? Because that model will work for you if you do it. I can't say it's immediately going to give you 10,000 people off the first day, because that's not how shit fucking works in this world. But it's at least a start. One of the hardest things to do when it comes to marketing isn't to narrow down your scope and understand your social algorithms. The hardest thing in the goddamn world to do is get started. So you pick up the phone and you use the phone and you do something. You just try. Even if it's awkward as shit. Even if after 6 Instagram reels, you're finally like, okay, I figured out what the hell I was doing. It's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to mess it up along the way. It's okay to stumble and fumble and say and not be as cool as somebody else's stuff, because it's not a competition like that. The point of this marketing campaign, be it Instagram or a Substack or a Medium or a Ghost or TikTok or whatever, the point isn't to produce perfect things that completely help identify the world with, this person produces perfect things. The point is that you are using it to communicate. You are, the classic cartoon thing of somebody stranded on a desert island. And so you put a note in a bottle and you throw the bottle out into the ocean. You are marketing. You are throwing those bottles with those notes out into the world. And wherever they wash up, that's the communication channel you're developing. Make sense? It's super doable. It's scary as shit, but it's super doable. And I know you can do it. And I'm glad it was February with an even number of days, because the math gets kind of messy if you want to separate it out. I mean, ultimately, in a month with 31 days, take a day off. But you can still make this work if that makes sense. All right? Are there, before we get out of here, are there any other questions, issues, anything from anybody? We went kind of long today. I keep looking at the clock. Questions, issues, etc. Yes, no, other, etc. Else we'll get out of here. One more mouthful of water, and then we'll hit that ending. Oh boy. Oh, it's always a pleasure to be on stream. I love that. I'm very happy here. The camera's, the camera, but I love doing this stuff. Let's get out of here. To the outro. What a day, what a night, what a time. It's so nice to be back. This was good. This went better than I thought. I'm very pleased. How delightful. The next time I'm here, by the way, will be the 25th at 7 p.m. streaming for you and your delight on Twitch, on YouTube. How nice. I had a blast answering these questions. Thank you so much for your tip. Thank you so much for your comments. Thank you so much for your support. It, as always, truly means the world to me. I do want to give just like a quick sort of general news update. Of course, the podcast is totally out and about and running around. And if you haven't put it in your ears, go wherever you go to get podcasts and search for John Helps You Write Better. It'll make a difference. If you're watching this on YouTube, here comes your YouTube business. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the bell or the notification marker for notifications so that you don't miss the next time I'm doing one of these. Hint, it's every Wednesday. And if you're on Twitch, following me is free. Feel free to do so. And if you like this, feel free to subscribe because it means the world to me. If you are out there writing anything you want to write and you want help, the best thing you can do is jump over to johnhelpsyouwritebetter.com, and I'd be more than happy to help you succeed in whatever way I can. And if you liked any of this, any question, any answer, any comment, any idea, and you want to see more, jump over to patreon.com/johnhelpsyouwritebetter, where for $2 a month, you get access to not only a fantastic Discord community of people who give a shit and actually, write and stuff, but also you get a ton of free access to everything I do all the time, every day, forever and ever. So it's pretty great for $2 a month. I think it's worth it. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thanks so much for enjoying this. I will see you next week, the 25th at 7 p.m. Eastern. Take care of yourselves. Take care of other people. I love you. I love you all. And I will talk to you guys very, very soon. All power to all people. You guys are good enough. Keep making art, and I'll see you later. See ya!